I'm Jerron Hollis, Managing Director for the City of High Point. We are going to have a press conference here. We just wanted to put down some ground rules first. This is an action-packed afternoon that we have today, so we're going to try to be respectful of everyone's time and the afternoon's events and see if we can do a hard stop somewhere around 10 after. But what we'll do is we'll have some remarks from our mayor and then from our city manager, and then we'll take a few minutes to take some questions at the end. We are streaming this, so as we're asking the questions, we'll give you a microphone so we can capture that audio ourselves. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce High Point's Mayor, Jay Wagner.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here today. Glad to see you here, and it's a great occasion, and it's always a great day to be in High Point. Tasha Logan Ford is well known in the Piedmont Triad region. She served as the Assistant City Manager in Winston-Salem since early 2018. She worked for a community development credit union in Durham early in her career before moving to municipal government. She served the city of Goldsboro as an administrative assistant, assistant city manager, and interim city manager from 2004 to 2013. Then she served as assistant city manager in Rocky Mount from 2013 to early 2018. She's been actively involved in civic affairs in all the communities where she's lived and worked. Ms. Ford earned a bachelor's degree in human development and family studies at UNC Greensboro and a Master of Public Administration degree from NC State University. She achieved the coveted credentialed manager designation through the International City-County Management Association and is a past president of the North Carolina City-County Management Association. She completed several highly regarded public leadership and management training programs. Tasha was born in Charleston, South Carolina, has lived in several communities and internationally during her father's Air Force service, but considers North Carolina home, and now considers High Point home. We think we've selected someone who is up to the task, and so without further ado, I would like to introduce our new city manager, Ms. Tasha Logan Ford.
Mayor Wagner, I want to thank you for that introduction, and it's nice to be able to stand at a podium that actually adjusts the height a little bit for some of those that are a little shorter than others. I want to say thank you and good afternoon to the High Point community, but also to members of the media. As I was coming on board, there were several calls and requests that I received to be able to connect with media, and I wanted to make sure there was an opportunity for me to do that early on. As the mayor said, my name is Tasha Logan Ford, High Point, North Carolina's city manager. As I begin this new role and this new journey, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge my family. Without my family who provides support, it wouldn't be possible for me to live out the dream. And serving as city manager has always been a dream of mine, as working in local government. There were opportunities early on in my career where I could have worked at the federal level or at the state level, but I feel like local government is really where you get to meet residents, know residents, you see them when you're out in the community, and you can build relationships that last a lifetime. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge each member of the City Council. They have trusted me to lead this organization, lead some of the finest staff. They have been so welcoming in these first few days. And also members of the community. Thank you all for allowing me to serve. In the weeks leading up to my arrival, I wanted to share a story with you. I received a number of phone calls, letters, emails of support from residents in this community, and I'm thankful for each one. But I recall one particular conversation with a resident who, after seeing the announcement of me accepting this job in May, called me. As we were talking, she realized that my start date was not until July. She called me back, and she said, "Are you still coming?" This was about a month later. She said, "You haven't changed your mind, have you?" Well, if she is listening this afternoon, I want to make sure that I say, I'm here, I haven't changed my mind, and it's been great so far. High Point has a tradition of excellence that can be seen in our furniture, our culture, our commitment to education, and the entrepreneurial spirit. Our leadership, our innovation, and our willingness to face challenges head-on is what I believe makes this city organization, this community great. In our organization, as I step in as city manager, I want us to continue our tradition of excellence in the delivery of services to our residents. Just this morning, timely I thought, I received a note that was copied from our Assistant City Manager, Greg Ferguson, thank you. And it was a note from a citizen thanking one of our employees for demonstrating our core organizational values. And I want to share a little bit of that with you. It reads, I would like to take a moment of your time to make you aware of an outstanding service encounter with a member of city staff. Recently, my wife and I requested a new garbage receptacle because our old one was completely worn out and the bottom was falling out. We contacted customer service and arranged for the purchase and delivery of a new container. We had a significant delay in the delivery of the container, or so we thought. After a few phone calls to the customer service line with no resolution, my wife asked to speak to a supervisor in environmental services. She was provided a point of contact by the name of Greg Holt, and in less than 24 hours, the issue was resolved, the new receptacle was provided, and the old one taken away. Mr. Holt was very professional, personable through the entire encounter. I appreciate this gentleman taking ownership of the issue, researching and identifying the problem, and providing a swift resolution. As it turned out, the receptacle ended up at our neighbor's home because of the day it was delivered. Our road was in the process of being paved, and it was delivered to the wrong address, but apparently by the paving crew, not city staff. By the way, we appreciate the pavement as well. I simply wanted to take a moment and send a note to management to be aware of the professional individuals that have been engaged as service providers to the citizens. I'm sharing this with you because living out our values has to be more than just words, but it must be demonstrated in our deeds, from police to planning to parks to procurement. I want us to set aspirational goals that include stewardship, innovation, equity, and transparency, but we can't just stop at having goals. We must do the work to bring the goals to fruition, realizing the value of each individual, no matter which part of High Point they call home. Personally, I grew up in a military family, and that has been shared. Early in life, I had the importance of service instilled in me. Having moved to various communities, I learned from my parents to be part of the community. Whether that meant rolling up my sleeves and getting involved volunteering, knowing the local restaurant hub for the information exchange, attending the rival football games on Friday night, or knowing the porch of the neighborhood matriarch where you can get all the neighborhood information. You become part of the place you live if you're going to be successful. I still recall living in Hoornsbroek, the Netherlands. There was a local Fritz store around the corner where you could get the best French fries. They would peel the potatoes right there and prepare them for you. It would have been easy for us to go to a grocery store and just buy the fries to have with our dinner. But my dad would take me to the store. I would tag along. The men would sit in the corner speaking Dutch. They would laugh as we tried to talk to them. We would laugh as they tried to exchange English with us. But a big reason that I'm here today is a testament to my parents letting me know that you have to be involved wherever you go. I'm often asked about how it feels to be the first African American, the first woman to serve as a city manager of High Point. First, I will have to say it's by the grace of God and the strength that He gives me each day that I'm standing here on the shoulders of many pioneers before me. I'm sitting on the shoulders of strong women. My maternal grandmother was widowed at a very young age with 7 children. My mother lost her father when she was 2 years old. My mother also became a parent at a young age, but she continued with her education and instilled in me a love of reading and exploring. When there were things that she didn't know, it wasn't uncommon for us to go to the library and pick up a book or talk to someone in the neighborhood. But I also know that High Point pioneers came before me as well. Women like Catherine Morgan Kirkman, who became the first woman council member in 1951. Judy Mendenhall, who became High Point's first female mayor in 1985. Samuel Burford, who became the first African-American city council member in 1971. Bernetta Sims, who was the first African-American woman to serve on city council and the first African-American to serve as mayor of High Point. So my hope is that my service in this capacity is a source of inspiration for generations to follow, not only for aspiring African Americans and women, but to anyone who has the aspiration of being their best selves, living out their full potential, no matter where they were born or what they may look like. So the question of where do we go from here? I want to recognize our City of High Point workforce. So many of them are here, and I thank you all for coming and taking the time. I also want to extend a special recognition and thanks to Interim City Manager Randy McCaslin. In his absence, he had a prior commitment this afternoon. Randy has committed 42 years of his life to local government service, with nearly 15 of those given to the City of High Point. On 2 different occasions, Randy has served, accepted the call to serve as an interim city manager for this organization, and most recently did so for over a year. He served through a pandemic, guiding our organization through such uncertainty, and I'm thankful for his service. For me personally, I have to recognize and acknowledge that this is a male-dominated field, a male-dominated profession. However, from the first time I expressed interest in serving as a city manager, it was leaders such as Randy McCaslin, Richard Slozak in Goldsboro, Charles Penny in Rocky Mount, Tom Lundy in Catawba County, Lee Garrity right up the road in Winston-Salem, and so many others that's too many to name, that took me under their wings and provided guidance. They had the foresight to know that our profession would be stronger if we were more inclusive, so I thank them for the support they have provided me over the years. July 22nd, 2021, that's today. It represents my 4th day on the job. It's too soon for me to delve into specific action plans, as these first few months have to be devoted to learning this organization in the community, building relationships that already exist, setting expectations, and learning how our staff operates. As I think about how to do this, there's a proverb that comes to mind from a book that I love to read. It allows me to kind of live into some of that military interest that I have, and I'll share it with you. For want of nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the knight was lost. For want of the knight, the battle was lost. For want of battle, the kingdom was lost. The kingdom was lost for want of a nail. There are no insignificant jobs or roles in this city. To me, this represents the importance of duty for each employee and for each citizen, and it's very simple. We have to perform. We have to perform our duty of serving others, policing our city, responding to a fire incident, a traffic accident when someone's in need, restoring a power outage, picking up the garbage. I want our workforce to continue providing great service to our citizens, and I look forward to interacting with each one of our employees. You're expected to serve in the capacity of your individual role, and you're also working in an environment where you are valued and where the expectation is that you value the contributions and the different experiences of others. Local government is often the first step for many of our residents seeking services and resolution of their concerns. While all issues do not fall under the authority of local government to resolve, we do serve as a connection point. City employees are the daily ambassadors, our connection to residents that we serve. And I want each of us to remember that we're not just representing ourselves, but we're representing the values of this organization. We're representing our elected officials when we are in the community. And we are charged to use public resources for a public purpose, often operating in a capacity for residents where we are their only advocates and their only bridge to a higher quality of life. As we work day to day, may we be ever mindful of the question, if we don't, who will? Our employees are not the only significant group that I'll have to consider. Our city council has been very clear. They've charged me to maintain the financial stability of this organization, maintain successful relationships to support a thriving furniture market experience, to continue to build upon the existing work to drive investment downtown, think holistically about this entire community, and to position our growth for the future. Last year, this council added new short-term goals that included a marketing campaign focused on our events, diversity and quality of life, a targeted neighborhood campaign, and to recruit 50 new office jobs and 5 investors to our downtown. Much like the success of downtown and Black reduction initiatives in our recent past, we'll use all the tools at our disposal, look for new ones, look for new models in other communities, and create our own here in High Point with our partners to make sure we are successful. As I close, I do want to take a moment just to talk about my personal priorities as I think about this role. I plan to work with council to gain a more in-depth understanding of those expectations as we move forward. Mayor Wagner has talked about these 9 bosses that I have, my immediate bosses, and in the coming weeks, it'll be important for me to devote some time to communicate with each one, learn about styles and preferences, and work collaboratively if they set policy for this organization to carry out. I also realize that our nation is still grappling with uncertainty and the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. If there's one thing that we have learned over this past year, as many of us were isolated or in quarantine because we may have been exposed or just at our home working remotely, is that we're not built to thrive in isolation. We can do it for a little while, but we're better when we work together. I'll prioritize learning about the various community partnerships as we work together on our key issues: business leaders, community organizations, faith leaders, healthcare agencies, philanthropic groups that are unique to High Point, and also our educational leaders. It will take all of us working together to build that more perfect union that we can pass down to the next generation. I want to continue our efforts to keep our community safe. Community safety was something that I've heard about in the past. It was something that I heard about at our first council meeting Monday night. We'll work with our law enforcement partners, strengthen relationships in the community to make things better for those we serve. While the city has key areas of responsibility, such as public safety, water and electric services, delivery of transportation services, we can also facilitate connections, as I spoke about, with others so that we can build the supports for High Point to ensure quality of life and equity for all of our residents. And lastly, we have to lead with transparency and integrity. People must see what we're doing, and they have to see that we reflect the values of this community and what people want to see happen, and that there's a commitment to public trust. And I believe that we can do those things here in High Point. We are uniquely positioned to affect the quality of life for our residents. And while we realize that everyone doesn't have identical needs, they should have trust and confidence that we're working every day to provide services and that it feels inclusive. We'll have ups and downs. There'll be a lot of discussions around approaches and strategies, but the guiding principles should help us to work collaboratively. Since 2009, I've kept a framed copy of the Athenian Oath that I received from the International City-County Management Association Leadership Program in my office. And I want to conclude with words from the oath. We will never bring disgrace on this, our city, by an act of dishonesty or cowardness. We will fight for the ideals and sacred things of this city, both alone and with many. We will revere and obey the city's laws, and will do our best to incite a like reverence and respect in those above us who are prone to annul them or set them at naught. We will strive unceasingly to quicken the public sense of civic duty. Thus, in all these ways, we will transmit this city not only, not less, but greater and more beautiful to the next generation than it was transmitted to us. I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to address you all this afternoon. I'm excited to be here and to give this community the best that I have. As Mr. Hollis stated, we do have a few moments where I will be more than happy to take a few questions before we head to our next engagement. And I'm not sure if there's a microphone that needs to be passed around, or I can repeat the questions.
Matt Jensen, Fox 8 News. What are you most excited about for the next 6 months, the next 12 months in your new career?
Everywhere I go, I'm hearing about what's happening with downtown. I'm hearing about the new baseball stadium and how that's becoming a draw. Monday night, we had some conversations about new events that are planned for downtown and how it can be engaging for all of our residents to come, and we start to see downtown as a hub. So that's one piece. I'm also excited just to learn more about the High Point community. As I said, there were several residents that reached out to me. Some had ideas about different facilities in town. They had visions of different nonprofits that are working collaboratively in different programs that might be in place, and not so much for the city to begin to take ownership of those, but it was about how do they become part of what's happening so that we can position the city for the future. So learning about those things, connecting with community leaders is what I'm most excited about over the next 6 months.
This city is roughly the size of, half the size of Winston-Salem. Do you anticipate working harder or just as hard? Or I know Lee Garrity does a lot in Winston.
I would say when you're starting in a new organization, those first 6 months you work harder. Once you begin to learn the lay of the community and who the individuals are that you need to work with, and it becomes a little bit more natural for you. You can maneuver a little bit more efficiently. But I do believe, I'm here to do whatever work it takes. I've worked in some smaller communities, and I find that you work just as hard in some of the smaller communities as well because you don't have as many resources. You may not have as many staff members. So it's hard to compare based on the size of the community. It really just depends on how many things are at play and what the resources are there for you to work with.
I know you said you didn't have any significant plans set in stone. So can you say that at least the first couple of months is dedicated to just listening to your non-process and the residents of High Point?
It will be facilitating those relationships and learning more about the council, the mayor and council, but it's also looking at our business partners. I've started to attend some of our meetings here in the community. I went on Tuesday as our Community Against Violence group was beginning to do a neighborhood canvas, and they were talking to me about their activities and how they are trying to make sure citizens are connected and making sure that they know that it's a community effort for us to address violent activity that may occur in this in neighborhoods. And talking with them, you could see the passion that comes through. So they've invited me to come to some of those meetings. We're also realized that we'll be preparing for the October market. Those dates are on the calendar. I did have the opportunity to visit in June and just to get a glimpse of what that looks like. But October will be the first time that I'm able to see it as a staff member here with the City of High Point. So I'm looking forward to preparing for that as well.
Congratulations on getting the
Thank you.
job. How are there are a lot of exciting things are happening in High Point. How can we spread that to all the citizens of High Point? How are you all going to work on that?
I think our citizens are some of our best ambassadors. A lot of times we do rely heavily on our news media and our paper to help us get the word out, and I think that that's definitely an avenue for us to use. But you have to start getting the message out from people, who other people trust. So I think we have to use our civic organizations. I think we have to think about influencers that we may have in our community, but also looking at some of those non-traditional routes. Our youth coming in through different programs, I think, are a great source for us to get the word out about events, but it's really about how do you saturate the market. There are some targeting advertising that I believe has to be done. Using your social media platforms is also an avenue, but as individuals just share things on Facebook, as individuals share things on Instagram, you'd be amazed at how many hits those types of media get. So I think that it just has to be this very targeted approach. You have to be very deliberate about how you roll the word out. But I also think people have to feel like there's something there for them to enjoy. So for different types of events, you have to think about what does it cost. There may be events that are free, but what does it cost to actually get there and fully participate? You have to think about the times that you're offering events, and does that work for families? There's some things that might work better during the day. There's some during the evening. Do weekends work better? So as you start to listen and get a feel for what the community can respond to, I think you'll start to see more participation in the events. But we've got to start somewhere. And I do believe that as people start to hear about it, they're going to come downtown, they're going to come in this community to figure out what's going on. Is that, we'll take one more?
Okay. Yeah, Pat Kimbrough, High Point Enterprise. Can you talk a little bit about you went to the flower walk with Cab the other day, and violence is such a pressing issue right
It is.
now. I know you haven't had time to get into specific ideas for change or anything like that, but can you talk about just share your general thoughts on the issue of violent crime and maybe things you've been a part of in the past as far as mitigation efforts there, and also the police department. I think they're down 26 positions. So recruiting, outreach, and that kind of thing, I'm sure is something you've worked on in the past as well.
It is. So I had the pleasure of attending a portion of our new hire orientation, and I was happy to see that we had some new officers that will begin BLET training that were in that session with me. So it was an opportunity for me to meet them as they're starting their journey with the city of High Point. More than anything, what I've seen to be successful is when you have community members that are involved and working collaboratively with the police department. I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and have any in-depth conversations with the department, but what I've seen work in other areas is really when there's a good collaborative partnership, and there seems to be a foundation for that already in High Point. But I will share a story with you from when I was in Goldsboro. When I think about relationships and how that helps us address crime, it comes, and I think it's successful because people trust one another. There has to be a level of trust, both with law enforcement, but also with individuals that are trying to even steer and provide alternative resources to members in the community. Just to meet some basic needs. My husband, which he would be surprised that I'm probably sharing a story about him in this setting, coached for a long time at our local Boys and Girls Club. And although we had moved away from the community, we went back for a local baseball game. And while we were sitting there, one of the young men that he had coached came up to us and, could tell that there were some things that were getting ready to happen that should not be in that setting. And he looked over there and he saw my husband sitting there. He said, "Oh my God, Coach, you're here." And my husband looked at me and said, "I am, what are you doing?" And just from that interaction, he sat down with us, he started talking, he's like, "Okay, well, maybe I don't need to handle the situation that way." The only reason I think that was successful was because there was someone there that he knew, someone that he trusted, and someone that when he offered him some different solutions and alternatives, he trusted him enough to think that it would work. So when I think about, what does it take for us to address some of the violence in the neighborhood, I think High Point is on the right path where we're talking about how do we involve our community? How do we think about crime not just from committing the criminal act, but also providing some of the supports with local agencies to make sure that there are some alternatives in the community. But at the end of the day, it has to be consistent. We have to make sure that there's buy-in, which people that are in the community, in the neighborhood, that know individuals is the best source to create and build some of those bridges. And then I think you just have to be consistent and stay the course with it. Okay. Again, I want to thank you all for being here with me this afternoon. I'm excited about working with our staff members here. I'm excited about working in the High Point community and finding our house in the High Point community as we are working diligently on that. And again, thank you all for being here.